Hey friends, and welcome back to another Majora's Mask project making video. Today I am excited to tell you that we are up to the second boss remains mask and the 27th one of the series. Yes, 27. A couple of you guys may have guessed which mask I would be doing for the 27th mask for the second boss remains because of the order I started the boss remains in. I did Adola as the first one, so naturally that meant the second one, and you guys guessed correctly, would be Goht's Remains. For anyone that doesn't know, Goht's Remains is from the boss Goht. I believe it's pronounced Goht, that's the way I'm reading it. Kind of looks like a giant mechanical, to me it looks like a mechanical bull. But, of course, with the name Goht, it is supposed to be a goat. It has a humanoid face and some two big horns, and it looks quite mechanical in both the Nintendo 64 version and the 3DS version. It is a bit of a difficult fight, but it is one of the more fun ones, thankfully. Basically, you turn into your Goron transformation and you roll around a circular room, pretty much like a donut room, chasing Goht down and trying to strike him while being in your Goron formation. Goron circle, roll, stone formation. I'm getting there. My brain's not okay. I was excited about this mask. I feel like out of the boss remains masks, it seemed like one of the easier ones to do. However, the more I looked at it, and yes, I used Models Resource as a reference, as always, it appears that there is a lot more of a geometrical shaping pattern going on behind the head. I want to try and make it as accurate as possible, but the thing about Goht's Remains, again, is that the Nintendo 64 and 3DS versions are very different. Specifically the coloring, but there are some shape differences as well. My plan for how I'm going to make it, of course, I am going to use my mask base. I am going to use foil to shape the horns and things like that, and foam clay to cover everything once it's shaped. But for the geometric kind of patterning for the back of the head, I think I'm just going to get some 5mm foam from Bunnings and try and shape that as best as I could using the references. As for the painting, I'm following the shaping reference from Models Resource just because it is easy to get a 360-degree angle and turn it around to be able to see just how the formation is shaped. But I kind of like the 3DS version of the painting a little bit better, the coloring of the mask, mainly because I like the earthy tones. I like that it looks like Goht is of Snowpeak Mountain with the darker coloring and even like the kind of orangey terracotta kind of colors as well. I also feel like I may procrastinate the mask quite a bit and leave it till last minute, which means the green patterning of the Nintendo 64 version might just end up being a bit too much for me to do within my time frame. Now, I think that's basically it. That's all I need to say regarding this mask. I'm super excited to get into it, so I will stop my yapping, and without further ado, I'll let you guys get to the mask making.
As I said, I brought up Models Resource as a reference on my iPad and grabbed my mask base, started to sketch out the shapes of the mouth and the eyes to the shapes that I want, and using a Stanley knife cut out those features. I also used masking tape to help as a guideline and make the eyes look more flat. This part is a bit hard because without all the other features, you're really trying to see the shape of everything underneath, what's not there, if that makes sense. I then grabbed a pen and marked on some more lines, basically the shape of the face, as some parts will be cut out to fit the foam and others have the foil attached for the features. I then grabbed a bunch of foil and started to sculpt the nose, top lip, bottom lip, eyebrows and goatee. Once I was happy with the shape of those, it was time to start to attach them. My go-to, of course, is using hot glue. So I grabbed my hot glue gun and made sure that everything was sat in place. Also, just a warning, hot glue will heat up foil, so it is easy to burn yourself as well. Just be careful if you do this. Once I was also happy with the placement of the features, once everything was glued on, I then grabbed a bunch of strips of masking tape and started to stick them on top to hold everything in place. I've been liking adding the extra layer of security that the masking tape offers, just because you don't want pieces fully foam clayed, painted, and then falling apart. Not that it really happens, but it's ease of mind anyway. Once the masking tape was added, I then grabbed my pen and I re-drew on the lines that I had, just over the top of the masking tape, so I knew where to cut and where to stick things. Speaking of cutting, I then cut off the sides of the face, laid that on top of the 5mm foam, grabbed a pencil and started to sketch basically a guess of the shape that I needed. I wanted things to be as symmetrical as possible, so I basically cut the first shape, made sure that it fit the mask, and used the measurements of the sides cut after that as a reference to the next shape I cut out. I know it sounds really confusing. I didn't follow a guideline here. I didn't even make a template. I basically cut out the first few pieces, taped them together to make sure they would fit, glued them in place when I was happy, then grabbed the glued piece, pressed it down onto more foam as a reference for the measurements for the next piece. Then I would sketch it and cut it out. Not going to lie, it worked pretty well. The only thing I had to fix up was putting an extra piece of foam under the chin so it jutted out a little bit from the bottom of the foam underneath the face. I kept up this rhythm for a while and finally it all came together. This took so long to do. Once I had the shape of the head completely done, it was time to make the horns. I grabbed a few strips of foil, molded one horn as best as I could, and then grabbed another lot of foil strips and tried to shape it exactly the same as the first horn. Once I was happy with the shaping, I grabbed my hot glue gun and started to glue it to the head. Thankfully, foil is very malleable, so even when it's glued down, you can shape it how you want. And I was pretty happy with how this was looking. The next thing that I wanted to do, of course, was grab the foam clay and start to cover all the features that I needed. I rolled out some flat pieces of foam clay and completely covered the face, as well as covering the horns, but I left all of the geometrical foam patterning. It's foam anyway, so I was trusting that it would end up cohesive after all the painting. When it was done, I made sure to engrave some lines around the forehead just to differentiate it from the face. The next day, when the foam clay was all dry, it was time to start painting. Now, I was completely right in the beginning of this video. I did leave it till last minute, which meant that I only gave myself about 2 days to get this done. Because I did that to myself, it meant that when it came to the painting, I didn't seal the foam beforehand. You may have seen me do it in other projects, other masks, other cosplays. I would usually seal the EVA foam with a PVA and water mixture, similar to paper mache, but I was hoping with enough layers of acrylic paint, it would kind of seal itself. And I was somewhat right. As you can see, I used a tan kind of color for the horns and the face. I used an orange kind of terracotta shade for most of the chin and neck of Goht. And for the top of the head, I used a dark brown. As planned, I went more with the 3DS coloring since the model's resource was Nintendo 64 shaping. And I was liking how it came out. Though you can see here that the first coat of paint did seep into the foam quite a lot. Here's me painting the second coat of paint. Already it was starting to look a lot better and a lot more cohesive. And I basically just did, I think, 4 coats of paint in total because I wanted to make sure everything was covered anyway and I wanted the foam to be filled. This is what it looks like after the second coat of paint, and I didn't record or time-lapse the rest, but this is what it looks like after 4 coats of paint. Much better. I did leave those coats of paint to dry for a little bit because the last thing that I wanted was the details to be painted on and the paint to just come off underneath it as I'm working on it. So once those were dry, I grabbed a pencil and a felt tip pen and started to mark out the different scratches and engravings on Goht's remains. I also used a yellow paint marker for the terracotta orange type area and added black paint behind the eyes and in the mouth. I also used silver to add stud kind of paint to the brown so it looked more mechanical. Once those small details had dried, I decided to put the mesh behind the eyes first before continuing on with the details. This did take me a while too because of the extra headroom of the mask and also because I got my nails done. Huge shout out to eBubs, but they were getting in the way, so it was harder to hot glue. With the mesh behind the eyes added, it was time to fine tune the details. I grabbed a graphite pencil and I started to poke holes in the studs so they kind of actually look like studs. And then I grabbed my eyeshadow palette and I started to dust around all the markings on the horns, contour the facial features just a little bit more, and add a shimmery kind of yellow eyeshadow to the yellow paint on the terracotta area, just so it made it more metallic-y and a bit more shiny and a bit more accurate. Once that was all done, I of course added elastic to the back of the mask to make it wearable. The only thing is, this is a bit of a heavier mask, so I may need to add an extra elastic. But this is what it looks like done and on. I was pretty happy with it, but please let me know if you guys like how it turned out. Feel free to subscribe if you want to follow along with the project, and let me know in the comments which mask you would like to see next. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye!